Somehow our country is still not getting it. The Bank of Canada has announced yet again that we are very, very much screwed. One could even argue that we are on the verge of bankruptcy. So we're going to be taking a look at that as well as the highlights from today's question period. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Dougie Boy is ready to start an economic war with America. Kind of interesting that that's back in the news. The last time Doug Ford tried to pick a fight with America, I called him the fat pig with rabies mentality, because it's very disgusting to threaten to shut off the power to another country. I also called it provoking. Well, that's an act of war. Cutting off power to another country is indeed an act of war. Russia hasn't done that, even though they are literally in war and have a bunch of sanctions on them because it's a humanitarian issue at that point. But let's see what Dougie Boy has to say this time around.
It was unfortunate that President Trump decided to move forward with an additional 25% tariff on our steel and our aluminum. I had a conversation with Minister Dominic LeBlanc. He was over in Washington, and I've really encouraged himself and the Prime Minister, as I've always said, it's tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar. We need to tariff the steel coming into Canada at an additional 25%, totaling 50%. What President Trump has done here is increased the tax of $15 billion on the backs of Americans. Well, I always say everything's on the table right now, and we had an agreement before that he was going to take off the other 25% to keep it at 25%, and unfortunately they broke a verbal agreement, and that's unfortunate. It's going to cost the American people $15 billion when you add up the steel and aluminum. It's going to hurt them to a tune of $30 billion of all the steel that we import.
Are you going to bring back the electricity surcharge? Because, you know, I thought you dropped that in exchange for some of this. And
yeah, I agree with you. I want to make sure that we get a deal. I understand we're close to making a deal, and I want to make sure that the federal government slaps another 25% on their steel. But regards to the electricity, everything's on the table right now.
Oh my goodness. You see how the reporter asked him, hey, are you bringing back the electricity surcharge? And he says, yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm sorry, what? Agree with what? It was a question. What are you agreeing with doing it? Are you agreeing it with bringing it back? Are you agreeing it with not doing it? Like, what are you talking about? Ever since he went to the White House and spoke with the White House liaison, he has just had the fear of God in his eyes. Rightfully so, because some of the things that he was saying earlier, it's just not okay, man. Electricity surcharge, okay, I don't think that's an act of war. In fact, that's probably a proportional response to tariffs. It sucks, but also what's happening to us sucks. So it's like tit for tat. Cutting off power, though, is wild. I don't think that if that were to happen in any other country, in any other part of the world, that would be a humanitarian issue. I just don't agree with that. Now, some rebuttals to that I've seen in the comments is that, well, hey, man, America's grid system wouldn't just collapse without Canada's. America's grid system would just prop up what Canada was doing anyways, and so there would be no power outages if he did that. And if that's the case, then that's a different story. But I don't know if that's the case. And we've never heard politicians actually say that. The proper response would be, well, instead of us giving power to 1.4 million homes, we're going to not shut off the power, because it kind of insinuates that they're just going to have a power outage. We're going to stop providing them power, and they're going to just power up their own people. Like, that's how you word it, but it was never that case. And so I stay true to my original response that shutting off the power and leaving 1.4 million homes, not people, 1.4 million homes in America without power is an act of war, just like it would be in any other country. But I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and comments down below about that. Now we got to take a look at what's going on with the Bank of Canada, because I just feel like they're not doing things right. They keep bringing rates down too fast. They keep holding rates. I'm not smart enough to tell you that what they should be doing, but I'm smart enough to know that what they're doing isn't right and that they are just doing things wrong and they're hurting us. So let's take a look at the biggest abuser right now, Tiff Macklem.
Today, Governing Council maintained the policy interest rate at 2.75%. Uncertainty remains high. The Canadian economy is softer, but not sharply weaker. And we've seen some firmness in recent inflation data. Against this backdrop, we decided to hold the policy rate unchanged as we continue to gain more information on U.S. trade policy and its impacts. The trade conflict initiated by the United States remains the biggest headwind facing the Canadian economy. Since our April decision, the U.S. administration has continued to increase and roll back various tariffs. China and the United States have stepped back from extremely high tariffs, and bilateral trade negotiations have begun with a number of countries. The extreme financial turmoil we saw in April has moderated, and stock markets have recovered their losses. However, the outcomes of the trade negotiations are highly uncertain. Tariffs are well above their levels at the beginning of 2025, and new trade actions are still being threatened. The recent further increases in U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum announced today underline the unpredictability of U.S. trade policy. In addition to the uncertainty about U.S. tariffs, there's also uncertainty about their impacts. At its April decision, Governing Council said it would pay close attention to four things: the extent to which higher tariffs reduce demand for Canadian exports, how much this spills over into business investment, employment, and consumer spending, how much and how quickly cost increases are passed on to consumer prices, and how inflation expectations evolve. Since then, there is partial information on some of these risks and uncertainties. Let me provide an update. So far, the U.S. economy has proven resilient. Imports were strong as businesses tried to get ahead of tariffs, and that pulled down first quarter U.S. GDP. But domestic demand remained relatively strong. Early indicators for the second quarter suggest a rebound in growth as imports fall back and domestic demand continues to expand. The flip side of the strength in U.S. imports was a surge in Canadian exports. This boosted first quarter GDP growth in Canada, which came in at 2.2%, slightly stronger than the bank had forecast. The composition of growth was largely as expected. Exports and inventories were strong, but final domestic demand was roughly flat. Strong spending on machinery and equipment held up growth in business investment by more than expected. Consumer spending slowed from a very strong fourth quarter pace, but continued to grow despite a sharp drop in consumer confidence. Housing activity contracted as resales fell significantly and government spending also declined. The labor market has weakened, with job losses concentrated in trade-intensive sectors. The unemployment rate rose to 6.9% in April. So far,
this is why we shouldn't be as reliant as what we are right now on America. We should not have any labor shortages. We should be building. I mean, take it from, and I know they're different styles of economy, but take it from like China and Japan. They never stop building. It's insane how much building and employment they have there. I know they got their own sets of problems, right? Communist Party, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But Canada has all these plans: pipeline expansion, high-speed rail expansion. We also have, I don't know, off the top of my head, a housing shortage. So we need a housing expansion. Like, there's so many things for Canada to be doing. Yet we're not doing them because of all the red tape. Because for a builder to go and build a bunch of single-family homes or apartments or condos, it costs so much money for the permits and the zoning and the rezoning and all that stuff. And our materials, our freaking lumber is so expensive. I mean, it's wild how mismanaged this country really is. It really freaking is, man. It's almost depressing.
Our employment has held up across sectors that are less exposed to trade. But businesses are generally telling us they plan to scale back hiring. The pull forward in exports and inventory accumulation in the first quarter borrows economic strength from the future. So the second quarter is expected to be much weaker. Spending by Canadian families and businesses has shown some resilience in the face of U.S. tariffs and heightened uncertainty. But they are likely to remain cautious, suggesting domestic spending will remain subdued. It's still too early to see the direct effects of retaliatory tariffs in consumer price data. What we can see clearly is the impact of the elimination of the consumer carbon tax. This knocked 0.6 percentage points off inflation in April, largely due to lower gasoline prices, and pulled headline inflation down to 1.7%. This tax effect will remain in the year-over-year change in the CPI for the next 11 months before falling out next April. Inflation, excluding taxes, was 2.3% in April, slightly stronger than the bank had expected and up from 2.1% in March. The bank's preferred measures of core inflation, as well as other measures of underlying inflation, moved up in April. There is some unusual volatility in inflation, but these measures suggest underlying inflation could be firmer than we thought. Higher core inflation can be partly attributed to higher goods prices, including food, and may reflect the effects of trade disruption.
Dude, our food is really going to go higher? I mean, this is absurd. Absolutely absurd. My wife went to the store yesterday and bought 3 steaks. 3 steaks. In the pre-packaging, right? So the styrofoam bottom with the clear top. I'm not talking a butcher. Went to the store and bought 3 steaks. $50-some for 3 steaks. We're not talking like freaking T-bone steaks. We're not talking the cream of the crop. We're just talking like basic grilling steaks, right? $50 for 3 steaks. What is going on in this country, man? This is insane. Like, is anybody else seriously looking at their grocery bill going, maybe I'm just going to eat like 2 meals a day or take up intermittent fasting, which is something that I've actually been doing. I've actually been doing intermittent fasting because life is so expensive. And I'm just sick and tired of paying so much more money. So I sacrifice a meal. This is weird. A little side note here. I don't eat breakfast. I'll just eat lunch and dinner so that my kids and my wife can eat all the meals that they want. Is it making that big of a difference? I don't know. Maybe it's a mental game. Maybe I don't need to do it, but I'm still doing it because life is just so freaking crazy expensive that I'm purposely not eating a meal. Sometimes I only eat one meal a day because I can't find it in me to eat $20 worth of home cooked meals for a singular meal. For myself. Like it's nuts. It's nuts what's going on in this country, man. It's depressing.
Many businesses are telling us they are already facing higher costs related to finding alternative suppliers and developing new markets. The bank will be watching measures of underlying inflation closely to gauge how inflationary pressures are evolving. The bank is also watching inflation expectations closely. In April, we reported consumers and businesses expect prices to rise as a result of tariffs, while longer-term inflation expectations remained well anchored. Recent surveys continue to show consumers are bracing for higher prices, and many businesses say they intend to pass on tariff costs.
Well, of course.
Le Conseil de Direction
Of
va
course.
continuer.
I mean, you can't ask businesses to not price that in. Like, this is mismanagement from our government. It's mismanagement from our Bank of Canada. And I'm looking forward to hearing what Mark Carney has to say about this recent update, because this, if I'm not mistaken, used to be Mark Carney's job, right? The Bank of Canada governor. Does our prime minister agree with this? Does he disagree with this? I would like him to chime in on this, actually. Maybe we'll hear about it today. But again, the Liberals are very delusional. They're glorifying the fact that our GDP has gone up 2 point something %, yet they're refusing to table a budget before the summer break. And for those who don't know, they actually voted on that in the House, and you had unity from all the parties against the Liberals, which is nuts. You've never seen that. You didn't see that in votes of non-confidence. You didn't see that ever. Well, I shouldn't say ever, but in the past, however many years Trudeau's been in, that we've really been paying attention. I mean, like, really, the past like few years, right? I don't think you've had unity against the Liberals the way that we just did right now in the past couple of days, because all the parties are going, what's our budget? Our GDP's gone up. You're saying it's good. Okay. Now Bank of Canada's holding rates at 2.75%. Oh, okay. Give us a budget. We need a budget. What are you spending money on? For crying out loud, man.
Council will continue to assess the timing and strength of both the downward pressure on inflation from a weaker economy and the upward pressure from higher costs. At this decision, there was a clear consensus to hold the policy rate unchanged as we gain more information. We also discussed the path ahead for the policy interest rate. Here, there was more diversity of views. On balance, members thought there could be a need for a reduction in the policy rate if the economy weakens in the face of continued U.S. tariffs and uncertainty, and cost pressures on inflation are contained. Faced with unusual uncertainty, Governing Council is proceeding carefully with particular attention to the risks.
So isn't that kind of contradictory? I'm just going to speak off the top of my head here, but the Bank of Canada and our Liberal government, which aren't supposed to go hand in hand, but let's be honest, they kind of pretty much sort of do. They've been saying that our biggest threat right now is America. America bad, America the enemy, America the big bad guy. And it's horrible what they're doing to us. We gotta fight back. It's hurting our economy. We're losing jobs. Cost of living is going up because of America. But we only lower the rates when we're doing poorly. Aren't we doing poorly if America is that big of a threat? Unless I'm mistaken, unless I'm not really comprehending what they're saying, that sounds a little bit contradictory. Either America is a big threat and these tariffs are a really big threat and they're really causing harm to our economy, or it's not that big of a deal right now, which is why they're keeping the rates at 2.75%. Which, by the way, just because the Bank of Canada's rates are at 2.75% doesn't mean that mortgage rates are +1. It doesn't mean that mortgage rates are 3.75%. In fact, mortgage rates, I believe, are like 5 or 6% right now, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me down in the comments in the chat if you would like, but I don't think that our banks are following the Bank of Canada interest rates for consumer mortgages because of all of the uncertainty. That's a proven fact, unless I'm wrong, but correct me down in the chat. It's nuts. There's just a whole bunch of hypocrisy right now. They're just contradicting themselves.
This means we are being less forward-looking than usual. We are focused on ensuring that Canadians continue to have confidence in price stability through this period of global upheaval. We will continue to support economic growth while ensuring inflation remains well controlled.
Governor, does inflation need to slow in both May and June before senior bank officials would consider a rate cut on July 30th?
Well, as I think you're suggesting, we will get 2 more CPI reports before our next decision in July. And yes, we will be looking at those carefully. I guess what I would stress is we did see, well, CPI X tax moved up in April. And I think more significantly, if you look at our preferred measures of core. And in fact, if you look at a range of alternative measures of core, if you look at the distribution of price changes, the percentage above 3%, what you can see is they all moved up in April. That has got our attention. I will say, though, that there is some underlying volatility in inflation. Some of the components, particularly travel, tours, for example, have been very volatile. So you don't want to kind of over-rotate on 1 month's CPI data. But the fact that quite a number of measures of core or alternative measures of core all moved up does make you think that underlying inflation could be a little bit firmer than we thought. So, that is something we will be watching. And what we've indicated is that, look, we're looking at both those downward pressure on inflation coming from the weaker economy and the upward pressure on inflation coming from costs. And we'll have to factor all that in July.
No. Goodness. And then we also have to talk about the fact that late last night, the politicians that represent this country were supposed to vote for this throne thing, right? Which is essentially a vote of non-confidence. It was supposed to happen. It was in the itinerary. And at the last second, at the 12th hour, at the 13th hour, whatever the heck the expression is, I know I'm going to get corrected down in the chat. It's none of those, but whatever the heck it is, okay? They were supposed to vote for this non-confidence throne thingy. And then they didn't. They just said, adjourn, whatever, tout fini. And like an idiot, I was streaming on House of Canada waiting for the vote to happen. So if you didn't see me have a bit of a meltdown there, here's the clip.
Build homes. I guess he was right.
21,
According to
69,
Statistics
14.
Canada,
What the
more
hell is
homes
this, a
were built
score?
in 1972 than they
Only
were in
numbers in the
2022.
chat.
During the campaign, the Liberals took our idea of removing the GST from new home sales, but they did not go far enough. They also pledged to create a new housing entity. How much comfort and confidence should Canadians have in this government to create a new bureaucratic entity when they demonstrated they can't even run a passport office? And now TD Bank is saying they can't build
the Minister for Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Well, there's a reason that we have a new Prime Minister, a new Housing Minister, and Infrastructure who are here to serve and here to scale up building affordable housing across Canada. Based on experience that I've had at city and provincial levels, I'm here to deliver, as Canada is facing a housing crisis.
Why are you guys laughing?
And that's why this government is committed to a leadership role, working with...
A motion to adjourn the House is now deemed to have been adopted. Accordingly, this House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 10 a.m. pursuant to Standing Order 24, subparagraph 1.
What? Hello? Is anybody out there? He's taking the king's thing away. Is there something wrong with me? What in the world is going on? Okay, hold on here. Hold on. My editor posted something. On my Twitter account. Posted 15 minutes ago. This was posted 15 minutes ago, and I'm just aware of it now after being attacked with all these numbers. The Liberals have adjourned without a vote on the speech from the throne today. Carney lives to fight another day. Spammin, when is the vote in the House? Brother, I thought it was today. I thought it was supposed to be right now. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday. But you know what the crazy part is? It's the government House leader. It used to be Karina Gould, whoever has that position now, Steve McKinnon maybe, who decides when the vote happens. So that's awesome. But the Chihuahua, François-Philippe Champagne, said in the House today that, and the people will have a chance to vote this week or in the next few days. So we're going to see a vote this week. Anyways, folks, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be super awesome for you guys. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're all going to need it. We're all going to need to stick together on this one because, man, it's going to be hopefully not a tough 4 years. Hopefully we have an early election. You know what I'm saying? Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. The good news is, though, that this NDP without Jagmeet is nothing like Jagmeet, at least not yet. And as long as we can just push through this vote of non-confidence and have an early election, that'd be freaking awesome, man. That would be awesome. I suspect, personally, that we're going to see dozens of Liberal seats just disappear because their entire platform on this past election was fear-mongering. Donald Trump bad, tariffs bad, we're going to stand up to America, blah, blah, blah. And then we've seen right away that that's not the case. I mean, yeah, okay, tariffs suck and it is hurting our economy, but our prime minister's not standing up to America the way he said he was. So there's that piece, and that might lose a lot of Liberal voters, which would be terrific. But all we can do is be optimistic or not, or you can choose not to be optimistic. But I choose to be optimistic. So on that note, Thanks for watching the video. If you haven't yet already, I'd like to suggest hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.